So everybody, if you're just joining us now, hit hashtag replay. I got a couple of great guests with us today. Number one, I brought back Drew. I'm sure that all of you already are aware that he was with us on the very first show with Sales Sidelines, and he has a testimonial that he'd like to share with us today. He is with me, as well as our other guest, who is Mike Henderson. He's been doing copywriting now for a while, and the way that I got to know him was actually through mutual connections in Facebook. But every time I read his post, it's incredible. So I wanted to interview him today and kind of get some insight on what it is that he's done that's helped him with this copywriting, because it hooks you and then it draws you in to talk. So that's something that we're going to get into, but we're going to get started here in just a minute. If you're new here, I want you to invite people onto the live, share this post, tag somebody if you know that they could use this, if they're in copywriting or if they're in sales in general, because even as closers, as remote salespeople, we need to know a little bit of copywriting when it comes to follow up, as well as like pre-framing, but getting people's attention. That's what it's really all about in sales. So give me a few minutes and we'll get started here officially in just a few minutes. I just want to make sure that you're inviting everybody in here. Again, hashtag replay. If you're watching the replay, I want to make sure that we get this. And I'm going to put all of these things inside of the chat. So it'll be inside of the comment section. So when it comes to our YouTube channels, our content, how to find us, what it is that we're doing, we'll have that all here available. So give me 1 second and I will bring all of that up here in just a second. Okay, so I'm hitting enter on that one. And then let's see here. So, okay, so all sales sideline training are live in the Sales Sideline Facebook group every Thursday at 2 p.m. PST or 5 p.m. Eastern time. I did leave the link inside of the comment section, as well as if you like this content, please share and subscribe here on Sales Sideline. Also, the Facebook group will be linked inside of the comment section. But just in case, like, let's say, for example, if you miss this and you don't want to watch the whole thing, you want to watch an edited version of this, it'll be on my YouTube channel. And then also we have the raw uploads onto another YouTube channel, so you'll be able to catch those if you want to watch those. Let's say, for example, if you're having trouble with Facebook. And then you can watch the most powerful videos you'll ever see to help you attract qualified influencer or closing opportunities on autopilot inside of the comment section as well. And then learn everything that you're not taught about finding, qualifying, and closing for influencers and what it takes to empower you in your career as a professional remote salesperson. And you can look at that also in the comment section. And there are testimonials if you want to do that. But without further ado, I'd like to bring on my first guest, who is Drew. Drew is with us right now. Can you hear me, Drew?
Yes, I absolutely can. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, man. Thanks for coming. Okay, so I'm going to enlarge this first of all real quick, just so that way I can see the text. Okay, so Drew, you were with us on the very first show in Sales Sidelines before it was called Sales Success with Virgil Reyes. I changed the name to Sales Sidelines because it is more about strategizing before we actually get onto sales calls. So it's kind of like what they would do in sports, you know what I mean, where they put them onto the sidelines and then talk to them about strategies before they get back in. But the very first episode that I had was about mindset and why it's important to us as closers. And I appreciated that you and also Bart had volunteered to go through this emotional freedom session. And it sounds like you had some really great breakthroughs. I asked you, if you could give me an update on what's happening. Whenever you have any kind of, progress or anything that you see, let us know. Josh is also going to be very excited about hearing about this. So I just wanted to, kind of turn it over to you. And if you could just share with us what it was that you went through and what your experience has been so far. Can you do that for us, brother?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So I think most of the people here know that what it's like to not have a lot of self, trust or belief in yourself, especially when it comes to something like closing and sales. Cause like most of the people who get into closing do it for the first time, like myself. So I had this negative self belief that I'm not good enough, right? Even though I was pretty good in sales and on the phone as well. So this negative belief was kind of holding me back. Although I had the least, I had everything I needed to close, but I couldn't just pick up the phone just because I thought that okay, like it's not worth it to pick up the phone because at the end of the day, I'm not good at sales. I'm not good on the phone. I'm gonna lose a sale. Like something is going to happen, but I'm not going to get the sale. Like I don't deserve the sale. And after that session with Jaws, after the tapping session, like I don't know what exactly you call it, but after that session, I instantly felt a little bit kind of lighter, like from inside. And after that, I was really different on sales calls. So long story short, I had a lot more self belief in myself, and for the first time in my life, I really felt how it's like to get on a sales call when you have a lot of self belief in yourself. And I did 30K in sales in just 1 week. So I closed a $4,000 package, and then I closed the biggest package in my company, that is a 25 grand package as a new onboarding in my first week of working. So kudos to that, man. Love Jaws.
Outstanding, man. Yeah, I know that you were talking about it. If anybody hasn't seen that show, it's called Deleting Limiting Beliefs. You can either find it inside of my Facebook group or on the YouTube channel. But Drew was one of our guests there, and it was very unique what Drew was going through in that time with limiting beliefs and the struggles that he had even before that. And of course, it stems back to your limiting beliefs, which is why it's very powerful that once you get unlocked, once you delete that limiting belief, it's so much easier to move forward because you have that full conviction. Like in Drew's situation, he didn't think that he had what it took. At some point, he had this limiting belief that he wasn't good enough in sales. And once we went through this session, all of a sudden, it was like maybe what, 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later that you received this new
Yeah.
opportunity. And in
Yeah.
your first week, you were able to close over $30,000, man. Congratulations. I know that
Thank you.
everybody's going to love that. Now, I just have one more question for you. I know you got to get going, but the one
Yes.
question that I have for you is when you volunteered, like what was in your mind? Because like you and I inside of the group, we were chatting back and forth through the comments saying, you were saying, yeah, I definitely volunteer. I do have problems with some limiting beliefs, like you had responded, right? So when you jumped onto the show, like what was your reaction or what was it that was going through your mind?
My reaction was like, first of all, obviously, it was a little bit of disbelief because, like, how it's because when you don't have belief in yourself, like that doesn't go away. Like, if you're like 35 years old, you have 35 years old of a guy who doesn't believe in himself, right? So you think that I have this, disbelief in myself for like a couple of years, but like just like from the time I got into sales, and how the fuck, but like excuse my language, but
Go
like how
ahead.
the hell tapping on certain phases of my face is like is gonna get rid of that belief, but it did, right? So obviously I was feeling a little bit this, kind of like, okay, like is it gonna work or not? But when you feel it and you're like, there's always like whenever you try new things, there will be always a hint of disbelief, and that is kind of good because that protects you from scam and fluff that doesn't work. But when something actually works, that it did in my case with George, then yeah, I mean the numbers speak for itself.
Absolutely, man. And that's what every remote salesperson is looking for is a result. And just so anybody's wondering, if you want to look up for that information, I will have it in the description section of the YouTube channel, as well as I do also implement that same tapping technique that Josh has mentored me to do so that I can help out people within my program as well, because that is one of the biggest things that I've seen that a lot of people have dealt with is that while they're in that entrepreneurial journey. It doesn't necessarily have to be just in closing, but they get into these limiting beliefs that they're not good enough, that they're not going to succeed, that what if they fail, and all of these different limiting beliefs is what's holding them back, and it's costing them not only commissions, but also confidence and the conviction that they need to so they can be successful. And I actually dealt with a lot of this last year, back in 2019, because I thought I had the skill set, but everything that I did out there was, it seemed like it was backfiring on me. And it wasn't until I met a couple of mentors who showed me what it was, what mindset was about, what your energy is about limiting beliefs. And that's when I was able to unlock myself. And I was very grateful. I am still very grateful for them. So Dhruv, I appreciate it. Is there anything that you would personally like to say to Josh while you're here on this call before you jump off?
Yeah, sure, man. Like the only thing I would say, Josh, is that Josh, love you, man. Right? Keep spreading this thing because I think most people don't know that this thing can all can also work in sales. And I've personally observed that there's a lot of aspects of psychology that people think that only for the people who have some mental disorder or stuff, but they can really work for people to get rid of these things like negative belief or negative thought patterns. So kudos to Josh for coming here and teaching her, because this is very valuable. Like this thing can literally change your career, like the path of your career. So I love you, man, and I will love to maybe talk to you sometime again. But yeah, I mean, keep spreading the knowledge and best of luck.
Awesome, man. Hey, I want to appreciate you for coming onto the show today, giving your testimony. I know that that's going to help out a lot of people. I just put the link right now inside of the comment section. So if you guys are interested, go ahead, feel free to take a look at that or reach out to Joshua yourself. Let him know that you learned about this through me, and he'll be able to help you. There's no affiliate program or anything like that, but it's more about credibility. He says that he only works with select few. If you remember, Dhruv, he did mention that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, if you're gonna approach him, just make sure that you said, yeah, I remember, or I learned about you through Drew's testimony or through the Sales Sideline group, and he'll accept you, and then he'll be able to talk to you. And man, thanks, man. I appreciate your time, Drew, and let us
appreciate
know
it.
what keeps happening in the future, man. I knew that it was gonna happen for you. And for me, it was the same thing. It was kind of like I was a little skeptical, but once I saw like a few videos of him exercising that same technique on other people, I was like, wow, this is powerful. And believe it or not, I actually have, I think so far it's seven students inside of my program that I've done the emotional freedom technique. It's called the free technique, FREE. And it's unlocking them. You know what I mean? They're getting to the place where they're getting breakthroughs and they're doing amazing stuff. So I'm very excited for you, man. I know you're in a really great place now, and keep us updated, man.
Absolutely, man. I
All right,
appreciate the
thanks.
time. Thanks, man.
All right, take care.
Take care,
So
man.
now I want to introduce you to our next guest, who is a copywriter, and he does other things along the side as well. He's an entrepreneur, like a lot of us, has many different multiple ways to create income. But the one thing that really caught my attention was his copywriting. Every time I would see his posts, and just as most of you already know, I'm not really a reader. But when I saw Mike's content, I just started reading and kept reading and kept reading. I'm like, wow, this is good. So I want to introduce Mike with us today. And if you can, just give us a little bit of an introduction. Let us know like how you got started into copywriting or as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story. I've been a writer for 10 years, but direct response, the stuff you've seen, I mean, like maybe 18 months, 2 years. So if I go back right to the start, I was in the financial world. I was in the world of banking. So I started my career there doing like trading, and quickly kind of didn't enjoy that because it was very numbers focused, you know. So I was just watching numbers on a screen, trying to risk manage. And it just didn't vibe with me, you know, it just didn't resonate with me. So I realized that to kind of get fulfillment out of my work, I needed to do something more qualitative, like writing. So basically my next thing was doing research. So I kind of used to write one-page investor notes for people who were thinking of putting money into oil or gold, that type of thing, which was also quite cool. I did that for quite a few years. I ran a small team, enjoyed the writing. You know, I was refining my technique then, you know, like a clean writing style, transitions, persuasion. Even without knowing it, I think kind of putting elements of copy into my work that I was just working out myself. But the one thing I didn't really get out of that was much creative capacity. You know, I was doing a job for someone. It was quite narrow in terms of the confines of what I could do. So I started doing copywriting as a side hustle. So it was literally, I used to follow this guy online who used to do kind of quite a lot of like masculine development, you know, red pill stuff, improving yourself. And he talked a lot about copywriting and sales skills and that type of thing. So I was like, okay, so I started to look into it as a side hustle, which was kind of going okay. It was quite slow. And then the corporate stuff fell through. So I was kind of forced into it full time. And basically just kind of hit the ground running. At first, it was just learning everything new, fresh. I managed to get this guy to do some mentoring for me. So he kind of helped to polish my technique a little bit, teach me the fundamentals, some of the main like deliverables, you know, and how you tackle them differently. But really, it's just been a big journey of discovery. I'm still discovering. I'm not like a massively experienced copywriter, but nor am I someone who kind of, let's say, spends a lot of time thinking or following other copywriters, reading about copywriting. I prefer to make it kind of come from the heart, you know, and my thing. So I that's what I'm doing. I try and put a lot of emotion into my writing, feel my way, and deliver stuff that I think, you know, people are going to see and it's going to jump off the page at them. So it's interesting to hear what you had to say. And when you contacted me and said, you know, the stuff I put out there kind of jumped out to you and it kind of vibed with you. That's what I'm trying to do. So it's like, you know, something's going right. And that's where I am now. You know, I'm using Facebook a lot more. I didn't used to, but I found it quite a useful tool to get in touch with people, get my stuff out there, publish content. So that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. So as far as like the corporate world, you were saying that you were kind of, I mean, you were numb about it, right? You just didn't like it
Big
at all.
time.
And
Big
so
time.
the one thing that I've learned about entrepreneurs like us as entrepreneurs is that we're okay with what we're doing. Like at first it was kind of like a discovery phase. Like it's not something that you were really putting too much effort into or too much heart into. But the moment that things went kind of south, as we
Yeah.
say here in the US, like where it just kind of falls apart with your corporate job, you no longer have that security. And that's
Yeah.
important, I think, for everybody to know, because when people are in a very secure place, whenever it comes to getting results or making decisions moving forward, when you're in that security, it's very easy to say, well, I'm already making money. I really don't have to worry about this. But it's until you get into that situation where it depends on your effort, on you start to get into this survival mode. And that's where the real growth begins, because you're like, okay, now I got to do everything I can to make this work while you're looking for other jobs or whatever it was. I'm sure that you were like, you know, I already have this. I'm going to keep building on this and then see how it goes. And obviously it turned into something that you were extremely, extremely passionate about. And it shows in your writing.
Yeah, it's true. I was 100% in that zone that you talk about. You know, I had a comfortable salary, everything was okay. But in terms of a person who was like finding what he's put on this earth to do and really at the forefront of experience, there was nothing. I was dead inside. And I personally, I couldn't deal with that. I'd see my colleagues around me doing the same thing day in, day out. And there was no life in the office or anything like that. So I would always just feel every day like I needed to escape, but I didn't have that impetus, you know, and then it came and then it was forced. I was actually doing no work. I can't really say that, but I was, for 2 years, I just switched off. You know, I'd do 2 or 3 hours a week max, and I was just looking at my own stuff. And then finally, like, things changed and I was dropped. And it's a totally different thing now. I mean, it's harder. I've got to be honest, it's been a tough 12, 18 months. A lot of uncertainty, but every time I make a new connection, it's the coolest thing in the world. The great thing about being a copywriter is you're at the forefront of invention and entrepreneurship, and you're jumping into someone's world who's creating the next cool product, and you're helping them to deliver that. So it's not just, I mean, copywriting shouldn't be just a case of coming up with some words, right? That's not copywriting. Copywriting is partnering with entrepreneurs, understanding and just articulating what they're trying to do to bridge between problem and solution, and get that middle piece in place so that you can take people who need that solution on a journey. And that's an exhilarating thing, because you are actually helping people in the process, you know? So there's a lot of cool things I find about being an entrepreneur and being a copywriter. And it's totally the opposite. You know, people told me when I was young, it's like, don't start your own business, it's risky, you know, just get a nice, safe job. That's the way to become successful. And it's bullshit. It really is. It's like, yeah, there are risks, but man, you get so many chances to put those errors right along the way, and you're going to learn so much more. You know, it's such a more life enriching thing that within a short space of time, you know, you're going to be so far away from where you would have been development wise if you'd stuck with a career. I mean, it's a no brainer. And I tell my young son now, it's like, you don't believe this idea that you have to follow the crowd, go to uni, do all this stuff. It may be different for his generation, but for mine, you know, it was that was definitely what a lot of people I was around were doing. And looking back, I'd do things totally differently. So I'm glad I'm there now, you know, no regrets. But yeah, I just the copywriting thing. I think I've finally found what I'm good at, you know, what I want to do, and that's such a critical difference. Because having sat in a seat where I'm doing something for something else, something for someone else, not enjoying it, thinking, why am I here every day? Man, that's soul destroying. So luckily, no more of that.
Yeah, and it's got to be exciting to see the results of your writing where people read it and it's impacting them in a very positive way, right? That's I'm sure there's a lot of joy in that as well, because in some cases, like whenever people are posting on Facebook or anywhere for that matter, they don't really get any engagements. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's not just about the content that they're putting out. But it is discouraging is what I'm trying to say, is like you put something out there and you're looking at it and you're like, well, nobody's responding. And that's what I see with a lot of people. But like we go to your post and you get a lot of comments on there about your stuff. And it's really good. It's most of it is very like long form writing, and it's very, very good. So I did have one question. Now you mentioned that you were being mentored, and I'm sure that that really did help you, point you in the right direction. But would you say that your style today is the same from that training, or would you say that you've developed kind of like your own style?
Well, it wasn't that long ago. I had my own style before I jumped into it. And I think the reason I chose the guy, because he didn't approach me. I didn't know he was a mentor, but I'd seen some stuff from him in a forum. And again, everything for me is energy. There was an energy that drew me to him at that point in time. And we found very quickly that our styles were compatible, even though he was a lot further down the line. The way, I mean, to give you the quick version of how I write copy, I'm very much, because I come from that research background, I'm very much like a structurer. So I think in terms of building blocks and having pieces in place and building out like a skeleton until it's a complete organism. I start from a skeleton and then I build that out with research. And he still teaches a system which is based around similar concepts like elements in place, you know, building blocks. So straight away we were on the same page, and because of that I was able to move pretty quickly to a point where, in his eyes at least, I was up to speed, you know, high level copywriting, which was great. In terms of has it evolved since then, I think so. I think I've fallen more back on my instincts. I think for a while I was believing that everything I had to write had to conform to a certain style, to a certain way of doing things. And every job I do now, I find myself more and more like unchained. You know, it's just what's coming from the heart. That's the best way to write copy. You know,
I agree 100%.
That's what I think. And that last post I did was my way of trying to say, like, when I say this, it sounds weird and people like look at me a bit funny, but I think with good copy, there's an essence to it which goes beyond just the meaning of the words, right? It's almost like there's a symbolism there. It's like paint on a canvas, you know, like a great painting. You don't really have to look at it; it just jumps out at you. And I think with good copy, the final level of detail, of polish, almost is like, you know, it's well structured. It hangs together. There's a great narrative there. It's persuasive. All these things. But it just looks right, you know. It's good looking. It's sort of like you can just see it. Like you think you're like your favorite book or magazine. You just pick it up and it just emanates something at you. And I think with copy, it should be the same. You know, that you should just get an energy from it. You know, and so I've been doing a lot of just looking at my copy and just trying to almost like tweak the visual element of it so it looks right. And it's just I can look at that page and think, yeah, that's inviting. If that was a landing page, I'd be like, it would draw me in. And then obviously at every point it needs to flow. There can't be any disconnects in that copy. You know, it has to naturally unfold, because obviously where you have those moments of like losing the thread a bit, that's where people drop off. So there's always something you can polish, I think, with copy, but that's kind of what my eyes tuned into at the moment, if you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, which is it flows. And that's what I notice about your copy is that I start reading just a little bit, and then you have the see more
Yeah.
um, portion of the post, and then I click on that. I start reading, and then by the time I get to the end, I scroll back up, and I'm like, I can't believe I just read all of this because I'm
Right.
not a reader. But it does draw you in, and then it does keep you engaged throughout the whole thing. So that's
Yeah.
great. So as far as like,
Like me on Facebook, you see posts and you're like, my God, I just don't want to read this. And I feel like with a lot of them, you could just say, hey man, just simplify this, take that out, make it
yeah.
easy. That's the other thing, make it easy for the other person. You have to. Sorry, I carry on.
No, very, very true. Very, very true. Whenever some people write in long form, in
Mm,
some cases, like I know when I write, sometimes in long form, it's almost like get to the point because I'm not that good of a copywriter. I am still learning. I do it more for like my business partners whenever I'm writing like follow up emails and things like that. I've done presentations as well, and then worked a little bit on their landing page just mainly when it's somebody that's starting out. But it's
mm,
good to know copywriting mainly because, like you said, it's something that attracts people in. And for us, as the majority of the people that follow me, that watch me, are in remote sales. So a lot of them were
yeah,
trained to take calls and sell them by that point, but they don't realize that what it takes to get somebody onto that phone call, which is what you do. It's the copywriting, it's the landing pages, it's what gets them hooked, what makes them feel like they're understood,
yeah,
and gets them engaging and moving forward into doing these things. So,
yeah,
and I want to point out something very important that you brought up with your son, because a lot of us in school, we're always taught that the conventional way is to learn a career, learn a certain type of whatever it is skill set, and then use that inside of the real world. And what they're essentially doing is they're working for entrepreneurs
mm,
like you and I, like all of us here. And it's important that I believe it's important to teach our children, hey, that's not the only way. And in fact, I could easily see within the next 10 years that there's not really going to be much use for colleges, or that it's not going to be as big of a thing that it used to be. That more than likely you're going to have a lot more entrepreneurs, especially coming from online, having their own businesses. And yes, there will always be colleges, I believe, but it's not going to be as big as it is. Even today, it's not as big as it was 10 years ago. A lot of people are looking into finding mentors, finding different skill sets that's going to help them make a living. And I think that that's a very huge point that you shared with us today. And I guess the next thing I would like to ask is, like, as far as your copywriting, how wide is your range as far as like what is it that you do right now or in the past couple of years, let's say?
there's a few ways of slicing that, but I don't really draw any boundaries at this point in time. I can tell you what I don't like writing. Um, like there was a time when I thought because of my background I would be like a financial copywriter, okay, and then I realized that most of that world is sewn up in terms of what do you call them, like the big publishing houses like the Agoras and all that. And to get, I think it would be harder for me to get to a high level of competence and reputation in that world just as a freelancer. So I kind of sacked that off, and then I tried, I guess, to niche down a little bit. But every time I try and do that, someone pulls me out of that, and it's like, "Do you want to do this wacky thing?" And it sounds good, so I end up doing that. So in terms of niches, I don't really draw the lines. Like right now, I'm writing something for this weird like product, which is like a film on a canvas, right? So they paint colored strips for every scene. It's like a bizarre thing, but very different. Most of what I've done is I guess a fair bit in the health space, MMO, making money online, little financial things, some kind of dating stuff as well, personal development. I think they're fairly kind of established niches, but I wouldn't by industry kind of narrow myself down at this stage. I just don't need to. And when it comes to what types of deliverable I would write, most of the again I just follow where the demand is really. Like I get a lot of requests for email sequences. obviously, email marketing's huge. Landing pages, there's a lot of people that kind of understand the whole ClickFunnels model, but still need a copywriter. So I found lately, like when I first started learning copy, there was a lot of emphasis on long form sales pages, which give the copywriter a bit more creative freedom, a bit more chance to indulge their ego. And I think lately I've seen less in that area and more towards more like functional landing pages, which is still cool. It's just a different style. And then a lot, Facebook ads, front end ads, video scripts, YouTube scripts. I've been doing some stuff with a guy who's a, what do you call him? He's like a graphic designer. He makes amazing landing pages. You probably know him. But we kind of collaborate, people see his stuff, they like it. He doesn't write copy, so we do a lot of that stuff. But yeah, was that what you meant by kind of creative? Or because I would say I pretty much cover all parts of the funnel. I like doing emails. I find that quite fulfilling. I do the occasional technical article, but I don't like that as much because it's a bit more kind of just plain and scientific. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you on that. Actually, my career as a remote sales rep, what we were told, or we were taught by our mentor to find a specific niche and to become like the specialist in what we do. And just conversing with more and more people, especially business owners that need a remote sales representative, you start to realize that it's not really, even if you consider yourself to be niche, it may not be the right industry for you. And especially when you're starting out, I think that it's important to have a lot of range, to try out a bunch of different things, and then find where you are. I guess you can settle in and say, okay, this is where I can be very effective in what I do.
Yeah.
And along the way, you do pick up a lot of the experience that's necessary to understand which opportunities, like you said, there's a certain type of opportunity that you would just absolutely say no to the moment you hear it. And I actually feel the same way in my profession as well. So I think that that's very important that you touched on that. But yeah, that was essentially the question. And the reason why I ask is because there are a lot of people that are considering copywriting, and I want them to see from your perspective, because they might be in some kind of training, and some of these programs actually, or some of these mentors, are only teaching in one specific area, like let's say, for example, email follow-up or web pages or landing pages. And so they kind of stick to that. And in my eyes, it's almost like they get tunnel vision, and they're not really willing to make any kind of budge, you know what I mean, left or right. And in some cases that could really hurt them, I believe, in most cases, as an entrepreneur. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of egos in the copywriting world. Like, not to denigrate anyone, but like what I try and do is avoid copywriting forums, copywriting groups, just because there's a ton of one-upmanship, and everyone has to have the final word on what is great copy. And I think there is, like you were alluding to, almost like a tunnel vision there. Does it matter that you've read like more about the greats of copywriting? Like I say, I feel it's more blending certain fundamentals with what's inside of you. And the way I would write copy successfully would be different to how you do it. And I think just acknowledging that early on, like, it's great. I think if you really need guidance, sure, get a mentor, sure join these groups. But I think there's a point where you have to develop your own style, essentially. And just copying someone who claims to be the god of copy or the god of this sector, there's always a better way. There's always a different way. So take what you can from them, but I think it's your journey, and you got to find what works.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And same thing happened actually with me in sales, is that you start realizing that everybody says that they have the right whatever, you know what I mean? But when it comes to real experience, that's the real teacher. Like that kind of guides you into what it is that you need to do to be effective. So very important point that you brought up. Now, as far as like, if there was any kind of advice that you could go back and tell yourself, what do you think that advice would be to maybe, streamline the process that you're in right now? Because people like yourself have also gotten a mentor, not quite they're not clear about the path that's in front of them. And I would say from the perspective of already being on that path and already making it a success, what would you tell other people, or what would you have told yourself differently, or what kind of advice would you give?
I think first, I mean, don't underestimate what you're worth. You know, I think it's easy to come in at the low level and just feel grateful to get any kind of work. And I was working for just bottom of the barrel stuff for a long time. Unnecessarily, I already had what it took to write great stuff, but because I didn't believe it up here, going back to what you were talking about with your first guest, you know, those limiting beliefs, I was like, well, you know, I'm new, I'll just start here, it's fine, I'll work my way up. But what are you telling yourself there? You're telling yourself, right now I'm here. You know, when are you going to give yourself permission to get to that stage? So that's been a tough thing. I think in terms of just the nuts and bolts, I would say, like, I was very reluctant to publish content. Like a year ago, I wouldn't have been posting on Facebook. I wouldn't have had like 3,000 friends or whatever it is and just been happy sticking it out there. I probably wouldn't have wanted to jump on something like this, because I would have wanted to sort of had that idea that I need to get to a certain level before I, again, give myself permission to put myself out there. So I think I would have put myself out there a lot quicker and just trusted my own judgment. Like whenever I've trusted my own beliefs, my own gut, you know, I've always been right. And you know, so I'm doing that as much as I can now. I think to other people, I guess it's your own thing. Everyone has their area that they need to polish, but for me, it would have been that just get out there, man. Just you're good enough already to work for these top level people. It's just about connecting, keep building that business, keep doing that 2 or 3 things every day that you kind of don't quite feel like you're ready to do. You know, yes, I can have a brand. Yes, I can be a big presence. Yes, I can take on high ticket work. Yeah, and that's it really. But on the writing side, I think it was all fine. You know, it's just a process that I've learned and I'm still learning. I think you can pay too much attention to what you need to do to write a good thing. I find certain things useful, like copying out other stuff, but I spent a lot of time early on just trying to go through the motions rather than do things that really get me out there into the real world. So that's the stuff where you come on in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think you're on the right track anyways. Anytime I ever come across that question and, you know, about like, what would you have done differently? My answer is always, you know, I don't think I would have changed it myself, only because whenever you go through challenges and things like that, typically it kind of creates the person that you are today. You know, it molds you. And experience is the best teacher. So, but I mean, yeah, as far as like giving other people other advice, like telling them, you know what, know that know your self-worth. Don't shortchange yourself whenever you're going out there. Put yourself out there a lot quicker. I think that's excellent points. I did have a couple of questions here that I did have from my audience, and I just want to cover that. So one of the questions that I had is, how do you achieve connection with the reader without speech? Like what is it that goes through your mind when you're trying to accomplish
without speech?
Yeah, like
Without
in
speech?
copy is, yeah,
Well,
I
I think
believe
it should
humans
be a
work in copy.
conversation. That's the first thing. But again, with these answers to copy questions, there's so many different ways I could answer that, and just depending on what I'm thinking at that point in time. I've always thought that copy, at the end of the day, with copy, you're talking to someone who's got a problem, right? It's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's not about the client. It's about the person with a problem who needs that problem solved. And they've been promised a lot of things in life about solving that, probably, and been let down on numerous occasions. So they're here one more time, and you've got the answer to all of their problems, right? And you've got to convince them that it's worth investing in, it's worth taking a shot at. So it's really about understanding what's going on in their head. You hear that a lot, but I would say forget any effort to try and, how can I put it, be clever, right? It's not about being clever. It's about talking to them as if they were your friend. Again, the words that are on the page should be as you would say them, even if it's like hmms and yeah, whatever, you know, that should be reflected on the page. We're not writing in an academic journal here, okay? And it's like, if you've got this problem, maybe you've got a back problem or a relationship problem, you're my best friend, we're in a bar, it's 2 a.m., we're a bit drunk, and you're telling me, hey man, it's just, I can't believe it, it's crazy. that's the sort of language I want to be using to actually, hit you bang, where you feel it, right, as soon as you see that, because that's the only way you're going to get a connection. I have to be taught. You have to sort of like hear this and be like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, this guy knows me. Yeah, this guy's just like me. And I think the way you do that is by stripping away all this bullshit that's in your head, not trying to make it more complicated. Oh my God, what's the best intro? You see all these generic copywriting lines, which I'm sure work great in the right context, but where there's not that congruency, between what you're trying to achieve, who you are, who the end reader is, it doesn't work, and you see a lot of the what ifs and the kind of classic copywriting language, but it's just chucked in there, and it just doesn't really vibe. There's no resonance. So I would just try and get inside the head of who you're trying to write to, and just it takes empathy, but just feel that and feel like you're talking to them one-to-one about their problem, and you're speaking their language. And if you're doing that, you're probably on the same wavelength.
Absolutely. That's very impressive. I liked how you talked about putting yourself in an environment and pretending that they're your friend. You know what I mean? That's when I started thinking about that, I was like, wow, that's extremely clever, because um, whether anybody believes it or not, that's very effective. I meant people typically are, especially when it comes to advice or being sold on something, it's typically when they're comfortable and they feel understood. And you just kind of painting in your mind as you're writing like this environment, and it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be at a bar at 2 a.m., right? It's just where you're comfortable at. I think that the emotion actually flows out of there, and like you said, using that empathy, that's got to be powerful, man. That's got to be really powerful. That I've never thought about that. I think that's a huge point that you just made here with us.
Yeah.
So I
And there's
also had another
other
question.
things as well, but yeah.
Yeah, if you want to share, I'm more than happy to.
Well, the other part is that you're normally writing in the voice of someone else, so you actually got to have that double empathy. You've got to talk as if you're the client or the face and voice of that brand in a way which matches their frequency. So there is that double layer, and you need to bring out their backstory in a way that people are going to care about it, who they are, their purpose. That needs to be there, because when it's just a faceless, landing page or whatever, again, people are going to be skeptical. You're trying to sell me something. So when there's a human to attach to that product, and I feel that there's a reason that product exists, and it's not just there as a commercial thing, that helps. And having that really strong backstory for why you actually give a damn about these people. You've been there, you've seen it, you've had, I mean, I could give examples, but you get the idea. That's important too. That's the way that's the way people connect with people, right? So having that in there matters.
That's very powerful. I think that is a huge point. I had another question for you from the same guy. It's Michael Gansner. And I think it's going to go back to what you just answered right now. And I can kind of see like I guess you could say like the physiology, but the question is, how do you do you ever try to predict objections during your copy, so that they have to overcome that? Is that something that's in play there?
Yeah, I think that's one area where I do agree with the standard view, which is just answer as it comes up, because if you're thinking at someone else's, put yourself, first of all, like we said, make it easy on them, but put yourself in the position of someone who's skeptical and who why do I care? I ask that a lot. Why do I care? Why do I care? Keep asking yourself, because if it's not obvious in your writing, then there's less drawing them in. Objections. Yeah, there's a few ways of looking at it. Sometimes it's just because you make a claim and you need to kind of temper it a bit, Like when you're I always think of copywriting as a balance. If I use some fancy pants language or some technical terms which are good in a certain context, straight away I want to water it down with, again, the pub language, some informal language, just to even it out, so the person's gets a bit of light relief. Because if you read a sentence that's very technical, I'm asking you to do a lot of work. Now the onus is on you. Now your brain has to actually think, right? And so I'm not making it easy on you. So what I need to do after that is say, it's okay again, and give you some light relief, some blank space, some slightly informal, jokey language, whatever it is, just to reset that balance again. And I think it's the same there. If I'm telling you this product's awesome, you know, I need to bring in a bit of humility to balance that out, okay, and make it whatever that might be, just to make it not too hyped up. Because again, there's so many ways when you get out of kilter that people can drop off, like, ah, no, this is bullshit, you know, or like, this is boring. So I think you're always trying to balance it, equate it on various levels. Another way of coming at this is just saying that objections are usually, like, if you were writing a sales letter, there would be various elements, building blocks, which are designed to take out those natural questions in people's mind, right? And we talked about the authenticity of the person, the face and voice. We need to bring them in. We need to show that they're an expert, they're credible. They might be a doctor, they might be someone with a background in that. Show that they're trustworthy, show that they're a real human being. Generally, when you're selling something, you actually need to show that proof that it works. You know, I'm saying this device does this. Well, how does it do it? And that, you need a bit of science in there to show how it solves the problem. Again, don't go too hardcore, but at least have that, maybe in a call out box or something, but so people can go, right, that's how it works. Okay, now I'm satisfied. I can allow myself to get drawn into the story a bit more. You know, I've satisfied that. My guard is dropped a bit. Then going back to that thing I said before, it's like I've heard it all before, you've heard it all before, you know, the online space is awash with claims, right? So you need to get past this objection, which is like, well, why is this time any different? Why should I even invest 2 seconds in scrolling down and seeing? And for that, and this is something my mentor was really good at kind of pointing out, it's a case of, I guess in simple language, he calls it new calls, but it's like, show how you come at that problem from a different angle to everyone else. So everyone else has come along and said, you can solve this problem by doing this. And you're like, no, that's completely the wrong way of looking at it. What you actually need to do is look at it like this. I wish I had a good example, I don't, but like, you know, it's that way you go, right, yeah, I see how that could work now, because it's not doing any of that, which didn't work. You know, so it's like a different line of attack. But there's always these same kind of building blocks, which are effectively getting you past that hurdle of the guarantee would be another. Well, what if it doesn't work? Well, it's okay, we've got a guarantee. And I think that's what copywriting is. You're just knocking out those objections in a persuasive way, keeping the person on that journey, and to the point where the conclusion is, well, yeah, this ticks all the boxes. And then you have the call to action. You know, that's simplistic, but effectively that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And great point about because there is a lot of things that were done very traditionally. Like one of them, I guess you could say, is like college, right? That's something that people did traditionally, and people were saying, "Hey, that's not the way you make money. That's not the way you make a living." Especially if you're living today, you know, like during this whole COVID-19 thing, you're not going to see a lot of traditional jobs out there. People are actually staying at home. So I think that when you're talking about approaching it a different way, that's unorthodox or that is not traditional, I think that that's very important, because it's areas that people have not explored. And I'm sure that when like you have a lot of professionals that are teaching these things, they're not really willing to give away the secret sauce. So approaching it in a different angle, I think, is very good, because a lot of like even us as salespeople, the way that we talk, and the same thing, I'm sure it is for anybody that does copywriting or writes anything, that there's certain walls that are built up in the words that we say or how we say it, because it immediately triggers, oh, this is a sales pitch, and then they just get shut off. So I think that that's extremely important. And then as far as like uh, your style of writing, it just ranges all the way around as far as you know, there's no, is there any limitations to your actual writing form?
I don't think so. I'm not quite sure where those limits might be. I mean, yeah, I do. No, not limitations. I think you might find I'm better at certain types of copy than others, but I'm just trying to think. Yeah, not really. No. I mean, I guess the limits aren't really in terms of the writing. I think I could adapt. Again, I'm naturally a bit of an empath, a bit of a listener, so I'm quite good personally at sitting down with someone, soaking up their energy and getting into their head. I find I can do that okay. So in terms of like being a bit of a chameleon and adapting, I think I'm quite good at that. Where I would be limited a little bit, and I think this is the really important thing for copywriting, is a lot of the time it comes down to expertise, right? Like you actually got to be an expert in what you're writing about to be able to see it from a very high view and say it in layman's terms, like what the key things are. Because if imagine I'm writing about, I don't know, think of a niche. I can't think, like something that people. I was trying to think. I was asked about something recently. Let's say it's something to do with tech, right? You know, I'm not a techie person. I don't know loads about computing, right? If someone hired me to write a sales letter for some computing software, it's not going to be great because the person reading it is an expert, probably, or at least semi-expert. I'm someone who's like trying to kind of like persuade them in their domain, and I'm like a fish out of water. So I do need a certain level of expertise, and I think that's where oftentimes people slightly come unstuck, and that's one of the reasons I do loads and loads of research. Like if you look around, you can't see this table, but all around me, I've got pages and pages of handwritten notes because before I even write something, I'm researching it extensively and asking questions. So I want to know that subject matter ideally better than the person I'm writing for, which is something I think that, is it Eugene Schwartz, one of these old school guys, said he knew the product better than the product owner, and he could point things out that they didn't even know. Because once you've got that level of knowledge, first of all, you have a clarity that can just cut through all the noise. So you're actually really talking to the main points. But also you can bake in specificity to your copy, which is a really important thing. And when you make vague assertions, right, you know, it doesn't really hook anyone. But when you're talking about specific things, specific numbers, specific points, really drilling down to the detail, then people just naturally believe it more, you know. So you need to be an expert. You need to really understand what you're writing about. If you think you can just turn up and, oh yeah, I'm the copywriter guy, you know, bang, 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 I read this in a book, it's not going to work that well. You know, so you do need to understand it. So to finish that question, I really don't.
That is,
it's going to be hard for me to know that niche, know that area. It's going to be if it's something I'm familiar with, it's going to be easier.
yeah. And that's actually a very quick and easy way to to fail very quickly. That's one thing that I did learn as like in remote sales, that you go in there and just with the confidence alone isn't enough. Knowing about the product or the service and being, like you said, the expert in it, definitely 100% will put you at such an advantage inside of that, whatever it is, copywriting, a sales call. Because knowing about that, when you talk to them, like you said, when you get into specific things, they feel like that they're understood, number one, and number two, also that they're in good hands. Like, oh, okay, so this person knows exactly what they're talking about. They know what kind of situations that could arise, and they're addressing it here, whether it's in the copy or inside of a call. And but that's one way that I failed very quickly, is that I've always been like, let me just get in there, get my hands dirty, figure it out, and let's see what arises from it. But in most cases, whenever I did it, questions would come up, and I would be like, that's a good
Yeah.
question. I don't know. So yeah, great point, man. Being an expert in what you do, that's very good. Sometimes hard to do, right? Because like you said, it's a lot of you could say external work, right? You have to go and do some research,
Yeah,
be
you have
very
to.
product knowledgeable. You got to understand from the client's perspective. That's all really, really great advice. Is there anything else that you can think of that would be important for our audiences to know about, as far as like them starting their career or continuing their career as a copywriter?
Oh, so we're talking to people that would want to be a copywriter. Okay. Because I was going to say, if they're just salespeople interested in copywriting, that's a different thing. I
Sure.
mean,
Both of them
since
would
we
be
talk
fun.
about research, I'm big on it. And I think I've talked a lot with various people about the 80-20 thing. Like copywriting is a lot to do with preparation and being prepared. I think of it like if you were building a bookcase, say, right, you'd need to get the materials, draw a plan out, work out how you're going to do it, cut things to length, get the screws, do all of that before you put the paint on it, right? The paint's the final bit. And to me, the copy is the paint. Okay. But I have clients saying, how's it going? Have you written it yet? And it's like, well, the writing will just copy for me. My copy writes itself. When it comes to writing, I don't look at a blank screen and think, what do I need to write? It's already written. It's like 90% there, and that's because of the preparation. And it's not just research, although research is important. But there are a couple more stages. So I'm asking a lot of questions, writing by hand, because that builds a connection between my motor skills, my brain, my eyes. I'm getting into character a little bit. Then I condense my notes down to a tight set of notes. So any like golden nuggets that I find, like, oh, that's an amazing stat, I need that. Oh, that's a really good way of looking at it. All of these awesome things, gems of information, I'm just isolating them and getting those together. So I've probably got 1 page of like killer notes. Right now I've got that. I know I've got the materials, the ingredients that I need to write an awesome piece of copy. From there, that's when I sort of I step away a little bit, and then I allow myself to think about how that's from a very high level. What's that structure going to look like? Is it going to be this kind of hook? Is it going to be bring the the face and voice in early with their backstory? Is there going to be more of a commercial opening? Just trying to get a rough lineup of how those building blocks are going to stack together. And then once I've got that, and I'm like, yeah, this is roughly the narrative, then I bring my golden nuggets of info, those gems, and start to flesh out that skeleton. So now I'm looking at it, I'm making sure it all hangs together and that it flows. And I'm like, that's a really good, that narrative is perfect. I'm tweaking it, I'm changing it, I'm seeing how it all looks and feels. And that for me is the important bit, the structuring. It's not the writing, it's not the research, the structuring, which holds the two sides together. And I'm looking, this is something I do and not a lot of people do. But I'm making sure I've got awesome structure. Again, they're just like maybe 5 bullet points with 3 sub bullets to each one. It's not a big thing, but I'm looking at that saying I'm happy with that. That would be a really cool article, and I know I've got the order right. Then that's when I breathe a massive sigh of relief, because now my piece is written, even though it's not written, it's written, right? Now I can turn off the left hemisphere of my brain, the logical side, the planning, all of that shit. That's gone now. Step away, do the sort of allow all of those creative ideas that now I'm full to the brim with to kind of marinate in my subconscious mind, which is obviously where all the power is. The real inspiration and creativity is in the subconscious. So maybe give it a day, maybe go do something random, play football, have a drink, go out. And the subconscious has got that info, and then have that little break, which people talk about a lot. And then at a certain point, all going well, these ideas should start to come back to me. Sometimes it takes me going back to my page and just doing some little highlighting, and then without fail, like 100 times out of 100, this happens. Boom, this big idea comes to me. That's it. That's what I need to be writing about. And then the process starts. And yeah, I mean, it writes itself because I have a structure. I've done the science. I can allow my right hemisphere to take over and allow myself to and it's a totally different thing, to just let that creativity flow out of me. And that's when I'm writing. I'm like, okay, I know roughly what my structure is. What's the first bullet point? Oh, it's going to be about this, and I'm blah 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 blah. How's it going to feel? And then on to the next one. And that's how I write copy. But that last stage is kind of like the fun bit, because I kind of know that it's going to be cool. And obviously I polish and I play with it, but what matters is the preparation, and particularly the structuring, which is going between research and writing. And I think that's that mid piece that the copywriters I've worked with haven't paid a lot of attention to. And they tend to be the ones who do have this blank page problem. They're like, damn it, what do I write? What's the intro? And I swear that shouldn't happen if you prepare properly, So
yeah, that's good. That's a good point. I wish we could do that in a sales call, where we can just kind of walk off and go outside for a while and then come back and be like, okay, now I got the right idea to do it. Because a lot of our stuff, and I had a conversation with another copywriter. She's fairly new, but she brought up that point that she likes it because she can kind of get away from everything and just kind of formulate what she's doing on her own and then come back and do it. And I told her, you're so lucky, because whenever we're on a sales call, it's like you have to have the right answers at the right time. And if you don't, you might blow it. But I mean, that's just sales in general, right? That's why it's very, very important for us to be very prepared. But the more that I've had this conversation with you, Mike, the more I actually want to get into copywriting more and more, because you've enlightened me on a lot of different ideas that sparked my interest and helped me to understand a lot more about copywriting. Like I said, I've never been a reader all my life, pretty much. And to hear and to read your copywriting and then to hear you in this interview, it actually, believe it or not, but you had me sold on copywriting. It's something that I've been doing, but it's kind of like forced, you know what I mean? Because I realized that us as salespeople, like my last week's live was actually on follow up, and I think I shared that with you. I'm not sure if you had a chance to
Yeah, you did.
take
I
a look
wasn't
into
quite
it.
sure what I was looking at, but yeah, I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was about follow up, and a lot of the questions that my audience had were about how do you prevent somebody from just not contacting you again, because you know that they're on the phone call because there's some level of interest, and then talking to them, you almost wonder like, what did I do wrong? And that's
Yep.
something that kind of hits you a little bit, you know what I mean? So I gave them some kind of like pointers on what to do to set them up so that they don't have to get on off of the phone call, and if they
Yep.
are getting off the phone call, being sure that when they come back, that they're going to be able to. But the most important thing, and that's what it is with us as sales remote salespeople, is that the higher the ticket, the cost is of that item, whatever it is, or service, the more of a the more likely it is that we're going to have to follow up with them. They're not going to just
Right.
in that same
Yeah.
phone call say yes. They typically say, you know what, let me do some more research. Let me go do this, that, and the other. And then they make their decision. So we still have to learn a little bit of copywriting to nurture that relationship between us and the client. So that's how I've been using it personally. And I'm sure most people that are in my profession do as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a two-way thing. Like copywriters can learn a ton from salespeople because first of all, we have to be able to sell ourselves, our services, and we have to actually know how to close deals. You know, you might be the best writer in the world, but if you can't communicate, if you can't assert your value and put that down in a clear way, make that appealing, then you're not going to get too far. And like what you say, that is something I've been talking about all day with respect to a funnel. You know, it's like on that first touch, maybe you brought someone in with a lead magnet, you go with a low ticket offer, you know, and then you want to jump them up to a high ticket thing. It's like they don't know you well enough. You need to graduate them. You need to build that value, build that trust, and do a lot more. And I think that sales principle, isn't it? It's like more than copywriting. You know, copywriting is just the words and stuff, but understanding the psychology. When are people ready? What do they need to know? How do they need to be treated? How can you get around these objections? I'm fascinated by sales. I hate to say that I ignored it for so many years. I thought sales was just this glib, superficial BS, you know, like, oh yes, sales. And now I realize sales is fundamental to pretty much every area of life, of dealing with people. You know, these things are extremely powerful. I would like still to raise my game when it comes to sales and know more about how people do it, because a great salesman can apply his trade in pretty much any field, right? You know, when you've got great sales skills, the world is your oyster.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, if you ever get a chance to take a look at my YouTube channel, I explained that, and this was like maybe about a year ago.
Yeah,
But I've always been drawn to sales, even as a little kid. Like there's so many things that I did in my life. Like literally in high school, I would I found out that they came out with this new what they call a Tootsie Pop, I think is what it was called. It was just a lollipop and very popular flavor, the raspberry. I never cared for it myself, but I noticed that everybody started showing up with it. So I bought them in bulk, and then I would take them to school and I would start selling them, and I made money that way. And so these are things that I'm still learning about as far as like myself. Like it's a personal development or a self-awareness type journey for me as an entrepreneur. But I'm realizing that when it comes to businesses, when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur, I don't think that a lot of people realize that sales is always going to be involved. And if they want to get to the point where they can be self-sufficient,
right.
where in other words, they don't have a boss, but they're actually just freelancing, they're definitely going to need some kind of awareness of sales. And it does start, of course, with the conviction, like having the passion of what you do and how it's helping out other people. I think that's extremely important because otherwise, like you said, it just looks like a bunch of garbage.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very interesting. But yeah, this has actually been very enlightening for me, and not just me, but my audience as well. I've got a lot of people thanking you, as well as saying, they've gotten some really great tips. There's a lot of great content. There are a few copywriters within my
Yeah.
audience as well. But very grateful. We are extremely grateful for what you've shared. And believe it or not, this is going to be seen from here on forward because YouTube and Facebook are like our archives. You know what I mean? It used to be back then that we would document something and archive it inside of a library or a museum or whatever, but now it's on social media. So from here moving forward, a lot of people are going to be able to see the tips that you've shared, and it's going to help out somebody in the future. And I just want to know, like, if somebody needs your services, or if somebody would like to learn or have a conversation with you, how is it possible that they could come in contact with you, if that's a possibility?
It's possible, yeah. Like even though I said before I don't hang around with copywriters much, I do like to talk to people. I like to have a few good associates that I can back and forth with, and occasionally there are projects to work on together. So for the moment, like I said to you, it's I don't have a program. I'm not really teaching, but I've done some informal mentoring and stuff like that. So that's something I have going. It's not very developed. But I like to be able to help people, of course, and likewise, get some input back. Probably Facebook right now. Let's
Facebook, okay.
friend each other. Let's talk on Messenger, and yeah, we can just play it by ear, I guess. But yeah, I'm keen to do more. More exposure. Probably, well, now onwards, basically. Get on YouTube, get on Facebook Lives, do stuff like this. So it's great that you asked me on. And anyone can reach out to me. Send me a request, and we'll talk.
All right, great, man. I really appreciate your time. Mike Henderson, everybody. If you need to find him, you can find him here on Facebook. I have already his name tagged inside of this title. So if you see it, reach out to him, let him know where you met him from. I know that he has a lot of friends that that follow him, like on Facebook. So just remind him where you learned about him, and then just get to know the guy, man. He's really good. Go check out his post. Very impressive. That only tells you it's like a small glimpse into what he's doing in the real world as a copywriter, and I think it's extremely impressive, man. But again, I want to thank you, Mike Henderson, and I want to thank everybody for watching here. And again, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. Leave a like or a heart on this post. So that other people can reach it. Comment on it and share it as well if you know anybody that it's going to help. And I will be here next week. Our next live will be inside of the Sales Sideline groups. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Any last words, Mike, before we jump off?
No, it's been a pleasure. And if you want me to come back on, hey, that would be cool.
I would love to have you back on, man. I will reach out to you. Maybe it might not be in the next couple of months. Let's see what happens, like somewhere around December, and then I'll give you a shout out. See if we can jump on another call. Okay, brother?
Yeah, perfect, man.
All right. Take care,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Mike. Cheers.